Welcome to another episode of our personal empowerment audio program, Finding Yourself in Paradise. Hi, I'm Michael Benner.
And I'm Steve Snyder. Our program today is on a subject Michael and I have been spending a lot of time thinking about and talking about recently, the subject of our upcoming Maui Mindfulness Retreat, the state of detached awareness, that special state of third witnessing called mindfulness.
I think we could probably launch into a discussion, Steve, of mindfulness by talking about what is mindlessness. And, I think in many ways that'd even be easier to do. To be mindless is to be totally out to lunch, not to have your mental nature engaged at all, just to be mindless. But mindful, well, that's a little more difficult to explain. It certainly means more than having your head full of thoughts. Mindfulness traditionally, in philosophy, in psychology, in education, even in healing and related arts, has more to do with where your attention is placed. Is it in the past? Is it in the future? Or is it right here and right now? And is it involved in analysis and judging and working things out? Or is it a simple, non-judgmental witnessing? Well, as you've probably guessed, it's the latter in both of those cases. It's to put your attention gently, to put your awareness or your consciousness on your moment-to-moment experience, and to do that without judgment.
To be able to take a step back and see the higher perspective, to be able to see the bigger picture, to be able to choose to not be emotionally involved or mentally involved to the extent that you think you are your thoughts or you are your feelings, to realize that you are the observer of those thoughts and feelings, and you can look at them, experience them non-critically, non-judgmentally, without needing them to be controlled in any way or different than they are, to be highly intending to pay attention to what's going on, but not at all attached to it needing to be one way or any other way. It's sort of a step back, see the big picture. The advantage of this state is that you're not run by your emotions. The advantage of this state is you get to see more and know more and grow more and experience more of life. You get to be here now. It's not something that you can do 24/7, but the goal, I guess, is to do it more and more, because the more mindful we are, the more we realize how much more we are than just our thoughts and feelings, how much more we are than just our day-to-day humdrum lives and experiences and habits, how much more we can be than we ever been before. So the idea is we want to enter this state of mindfulness more and more. Well, why don't people spend more time in mindfulness? I think there's three basic reasons that come to my mind. Number one is they don't know about it. It's never been taught to them. They've never experienced the state of stepping back and observing themselves. Or they have, it's random and they don't know how to do it. They don't understand it as being a desired outcome. So number one, they don't know about it. Number two, they do know about it, but they don't really want to do it. They're afraid of looking inside. They're afraid of stepping back and, like, I'll lose control or I'll lose the ability to manage my life if I step back and take any time off or any break. They know about it, and they're intellectually, it's the ones that they read all the books about it. They just don't really ever sit down and actually do anything about it. And then there's the third group that know about it and they want to do it. They just really don't know how. They have this idea that it takes this deep trance meditation, this like losing all thought and being this place of disconnected from all reality, and like this almost asleep place where you're hovering on the edge of consciousness. They have this outline in their mind that to be really in this trance state or this mindful state is a very special, unique thing, and only some people can do it, and I can't slow down my thinking enough to get into that state. Well, that's just a misunderstanding of the basic premise, because people think, well, I've got to slow down my thinking, I've got to stop thinking to meditate, when actually the opposite is the case, really. Meditation is the thing you do even while you're thinking. You meditate, and then the thinking gets less and less, and finally you're noticing your thoughts, and then they come less frequently, and finally you don't stop thinking to meditate, you meditate, and then you just sort of stop thinking.
And even if that thought stream continues, you're detached from it. You're looking at it the way you'd look at a movie on the wall and observe it from this mindful point of view. This is nothing less than a quantum leap in the evolution of humanity. Even though the concept is thousands of years old in Eastern philosophy, it's taken a while for the Western world to discover it and recognize the benefits of mindfulness. But imagine evolving from the inanimate mineral kingdom to the plant kingdom, which grows and reproduces and heals itself and produces fruit, to the animal kingdom, which is even more liberated now. Animals can run and jump, they can fly and swim. And then there's the human, and we thought, wow, the human is so different from all these other kingdoms because it can reflect upon its thoughts. It can be rational, it can be deductive, it could be logical. But often we're not. Why? Well, because we're not mindful and because we get overwhelmed by our emotional nature. All these thoughts carry some emotional affect, often a huge emotional affect, which sort of renders the thought meaningless. The experience then becomes more about the emotion than the thought that got you there. But notice how 99% of the time, virtually all human beings play victim to their thoughts and feelings. This happened to me. I felt that way. And yet we have this ability. It requires a practice. You have to cultivate this skill. Like any other performance, you really need to rehearse and practice. But we can detach mindfully, as if holding our thoughts at arm's length, or detaching and again, holding our emotional nature at arm's length and saying, look at the way I'm thinking. Isn't that interesting? And you don't judge it as right or wrong or good or bad or maybe I could do better or I used to be worse. You just let go of all of those thoughts and look at the core value. That's the way I've been thinking. This is my belief system. Maybe I could learn from that. But you observe it almost as if it were presented to you by somebody else. It was really their thought. Except in this case, you're looking at your thought stream, your belief systems born of your attitudes and expectations. And the same thing with your emotions. I mean, let's take a big, overwhelming emotion like anger. What if you could see your anger coming a mile away? Could, through a practice of mindfulness, become sensitive enough to recognize what we could call the early warning signs, the signals that, I'm starting to get really angry. I'm starting to get really upset. Then I could choose to take a breath and relax, right? Because that lowers the brainwave frequency and allows you to concentrate or pay attention because your body now thinks it's very safe. You just did this one slow, deep breath, maybe felt a little letting go in the body, and became mindful in the moment and looked at that anger, you see. Well, now you can head it off at the pass. You can nip it in the bud. You can make a decision to learn from your anger before it gets all big and overwhelming and causes you to say things you're later going to regret or do things you're going to resent immediately and then wonder, why do I get so angry? Why can't I control my anger? Well, why can't we control, or better said, manage any of our emotional feelings or be more in charge of that thought stream that spontaneously just bubbles up even when our thinking isn't applied? Well, we can. We can. It's almost like doing a meditation that after you open your eyes and move out into the world, you carry that same level of awareness with you.
So we look at the power of this state of mindfulness as really something truly unique. You think about human beings, and we are essentially living in a universe of matter and energy. And the body is matter, and you could even make an argument that emotions are the chemicals and the hormones going on inside of us made out of matter, and that the thoughts are, electrical discharges in the brain that are made out of energy. You can argue that human beings are thoughts and energy, but yet this mindfulness state, this ability to step back and observe your thoughts and your feelings, that's not matter or energy. That's the only thing in the universe that isn't matter or energy, and it's consciousness. Consciousness is a unique thing. It's something only human beings have that is not matter nor energy. You can say thoughts are matter or energy and feelings are, but consciousness is neither matter nor energy. And I think there's something that interacts on a subatomic level with consciousness, because subatomic particles are like going in and out of existence. I mean, they could exist and not exist at the same time. It's really fascinating when you start to study quantum physics. So consciousness interacts somehow on a really unique level with, subatomic particles. So we're talking about a really unique phenomena that human beings have accessible to them, and that separates us from all other animals more than anything else we can do. No other animal has the ability to step back and observe itself doing what it's doing and choose to continue or choose to change. No other animal can pay attention to its individual thoughts and feelings and choose which ones to empower and which ones to release inert. No other animal can do that. And when we don't do that, when we act on impulse, when we live on habit and autopilot, then we're not that much different than animals. We're just doing what we're doing all the time, living in the past, living in the future, worrying and regretting. But when we step back and move into this mindfulness state, which is, it's very Buddhist, because it's like, it's not disconnected. You're there, it's you, but you're detached. You have a high intention but a low attachment. It doesn't, what you're wanting doesn't have to happen. It's okay if it happens, if it's okay if it doesn't happen. What you're okay with is that the is, that whatever is in existence right now is okay. It's exactly what it is. I can want it to be better in the future, and I can work to make it better in the future. But as for exactly what it is right now, I'm relaxed with that. I'm okay with that. I'm detached from it needing to be any different than that. And with that comes something that I think most human beings used to have some of the time, and some human beings now have all of the time, but many human beings hardly have any of the time, which is a state called peace of mind. Peace of mind. It's a state we all had, our ancestors all had when they were in the tribe, surrounded and safe. We always had this ability to feel safe. But now, with so much happening and trying to do so many things, some people will just give up, virtually abandon this experience of peace of mind. And if they experience it at all, it's a momentary glimpse on the way to sleep. We need to live there more. And as long as we're attached to outcomes, there's too much emotional involvement. We are our emotions. We are our thoughts and feelings. Then we're just, rattled by experiences. But if we can take that step back, even for some of the time, it changes our outlook. It changes our perspective. And it makes us realize that, we're a tiny little infinitesimal part of something much, much bigger, and that our power isn't in like trying to change what happens. It's having the incredible power to choose your perspective and perception of what happens, and your attitude and belief about what happens, and whatever response you want to make to what happens.
If we're going to talk about the benefits beginning with peace of mind, I'd like to hasten to add that peace of mind comes with a little smile on your face.
Doesn't it now?
There's a quality of contentment, a depth of satisfaction. To borrow from Jagger, I can't get no satisfaction, everybody telling me what to do. Well, we all understand that. It comes from trying to please other people. One of the things we're going to do at the Maui retreat in the middle of February this year is talk about how much of our time spent not being mindful is focused upon our petitioning others for approval and acceptance. Even if we have so-called healthy self-esteem, we like the feeling of having it fed and reinforced. And even if you're aware of the process and know, well, I'm more than that ego, the ego still likes being reassured. It's a very frightened thing, the ego. It's your defense mechanism. It's the survival part, the fight or flight part, the amygdala in the brain. It gets real scared real easily and needs lots of hugs and lots of reassurance. But If you spend in your lifetime years, literally years, petitioning others for approval, that's time that you're distracted from what's really happening in your life right now. And then you wonder why you're dissatisfied, why you can't get no satisfaction. This, Steve mentioned Buddhism. They talk about suffering. It's not suffering so much as a lack of fulfillment. Like, even if I'm successful and rich and healthy and have lots of friends, people will admit, most of them anyway, that they're not quite full yet. There's some sort of missing piece, some thirst they can't seem to quench, or appetite that they can't seem to nourish quite. And what is that? It's the spiritual dimension. It's the identity of who we really are when we find this internal peace of mind, when we feel safe enough to relax and focus our attention without judgment, without petitioning other people for approval or acceptance, not to mention the efforts to control all that's happening to us, when our attention instead should be placed on how we look at it and what we choose to do with it. And then, of course, there's the whole idea of just judging, as if it's our job to decide whether something is good or bad, or right or wrong, and where it fits into our lives. Between the petitioning for approval and acceptance, the need to control what's happening to us, and the constant judging, my God, no wonder we're not paying attention to what's happening right now. We've got this big job. We've got a micromanaged life. My God, if I don't worry all day about these 3 areas of my life and break it down and parse it and figure it all out, what? The world will stop turning. My life will end. I've got to earn a living. It's not really true, especially when it comes to just problem solving. Most of your problems will resolve themselves. It takes very little effort in most cases. Now, this is difficult to discuss because most people immediately jump to an extreme and use it as an example of where they had to make an effort to figure something out and solve a problem and make their lives work. And, well, I'll grant you the argument. I'm just saying that a lot of that's unnecessary. Some of it, okay, I'll give you the argument. But a lot of the micromanaging we do, a lot of the worry and stress, most of it really, is absolutely unnecessary. Life is conspiring. Everything about life from a spiritual point of view wants you to succeed and be happy, to face anything that scares you and confuses you so as to understand it and bring your love and your light to that and know yourself. As a result of knowing yourself and growing yourself in this way, you can help other people do the same thing. That pretty much sums it up now, to pay attention to that process. And, if the car breaks down or you get an unexpected bill in the mail or you got a problem to solve, well, fine. But even the worst problems, I would argue, are best solved when looked at from a mindful point of view. When you hold it at an arm's length and separate yourself, in a sense, from the thoughts and the feelings that we believe is our identity. Those thoughts and those feelings, that's not your identity. The saying, clothes make the man. You ever heard that? The power dressing. Women do this to the executives. You got to have this right look. Well, I understand the merit in the statement. There's a certain truth to it. But in fact, your identity is not defined by or limited by the clothing that you wear. That's just an appearance, right? Well, in much the same way, your thoughts and feelings are a kind of a clothing that you wear. It's something that you do. I'm not saying you can exist without thoughts and feelings. I'm just saying you're more than the thinker. You're more than the feeler. You're the witness of those thoughts and feelings. Again, you can experience your thoughts and feelings without being driven by them. If you think of a thought stream, a stream of consciousness as a little river, most people experience their thoughts and feelings as if they're in the water. Seems to me mindfulness can be scrambling up on the bank of that river, sitting high up on the shoulder of the river, looking at that thought stream going by, but you never get wet.
Yeah, the basic difference is that if you're living your life through ego, through your sense of fear, then you're seeing your life through that lens, the lens of fear. Everything's called dangerous or confusing or frustrating or upsetting, or everything seems to be just something you're scared of, something you're worried about. But if you're in that, take a step back, see the higher perspective, feel safe, see it through a mindfulness lens, then you're seeing it through a lens of love. And now it's exciting. And now it's, you're optimistic about the results. And you're like, instead of worrying, you're solution thinking. And instead of like regretting, you're learning from the mistakes that you made. And it's a whole different perspective. It's like the difference between fear and excitement is just breathing. Two people are on a roller coaster and one person's terrified and the other thinks it's terrific. It's the same thing. It's how you viewing this, how you seeing this thing in life. And if you're seeing it from the point of view of, oh, no, I don't want to die. Oh, no, I don't want to be worse than I am. Oh, no, I don't want anything bad to happen to me. Oh, no, oh, no, oh, no. If you're looking through life through that lens, as so many people do, then there's a lot of dangerous things out there if you're looking through the lens of, oh, no. But once you take a step back, and now you're looking through the lens of, oh, wow. It's like, oh, wow. Look, wow. I'm not driven by my thoughts. I see them. I understand them. I'm not impelled by my feelings. I experience them. I know them. But now I can take that extra moment and say things that I'll be proud of saying instead of say things I'll regret, do things that I'll be courageous instead of cowardly. I can change my whole life because now I'm not being pulled, but rather I'm in charge. I'm in that state where it's my life to be the conductor, director, orchestrator, choreographer of. I get to play the parts, and I get to play them the way I want to play them instead of being driven by any external force. It's a whole other way of feeling. And life is life. If you look at it through a lens of fear, it's a very scary place. If you look at it through a lens of love, it's a very beloved place. It's really your perspective. And what we're saying more than anything else is that mindfulness doesn't happen automatically. You've got to choose it. You've got to decide to do it. You've got to take the steps to go there. But once you do, your whole being will thank you for it. It's a beloved act to do for yourself, to take a step back out of the fear and into the place of seeing the world through the lens of love.
Here's an example. Let's take a food that you've decided you just don't like. Probably we could go to vegetables, right? You don't like broccoli. You don't like peas. You never have. You might be 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, but that's okay. Don't serve me broccoli. I don't eat that stuff. I decided long ago I just didn't like broccoli. How long ago? And does that decision merit review? Maybe you're not the same person you were 30 or 40 years ago. Maybe, especially knowing what you know about the value of vegetables in a good diet, especially cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, kale, cabbage, these things are really, really good for you. Anti-cancer, anti-heart disease. These are veggies that'll keep you alive for much longer than you'd otherwise be alive if you didn't consume them. So fine, it doesn't taste like a hot fudge sundae maybe. It's not quite as sweet as all of that. But when was the last time you really tasted this broccoli or this food that you've decided that you don't like? Maybe if you tried it, especially if you went and bought some really nice organic broccoli, right, and steamed it until it was just right and paid attention. In other words, you washed it and then cooked it, preparing it mindfully, with care, with attention. And then you tasted it, and you thought not only about the flavor, but you thought about the nutrition that you were getting and how that was going to course through your body and feed every one of those billions of cells in your body. Okay? Well, that could change your experience of broccoli, right? There's so much that we think about ourselves that is nothing more than a bunch of assumptions we made a long time ago. Now, if you live mindfully, you're constantly reviewing. It's just a matter of paying attention. I think the simplest way of explaining mindfulness is to pay attention to what's happening right now. So, imagine we're living out of these false assumptions, or these assumptions that may have been true when we made them, but have become false, and because we haven't been mindful, we haven't done the review. We need to go back and say, well, maybe I can change some of these attitudes and some of these beliefs, even about religion and politics, which have this emotional charge because they're often rooted in childhood. We're a product of our birth. We often become our parents, even if we promise we never will. It tends to happen. Or we become enculturated, right? What is the chance that you're going to be a Muslim if you're born in Iowa? What is the chance you're going to be a Christian if you're born in Calcutta? It's possible, but you understand what I'm saying. So again, a mindful person is always reviewing. They're awake, don't you see? On a higher level, they're more aware of the choices that we all have. And this is where life is happening, right here, right now. This moment is the only thing there ever is. The past, well, that's in the past, and the future, well, that hasn't come yet. So this moment just unfolds, and now another moment goes by, and it's this moment, and then it happens again, and now it's this moment. This perpetual unfolding now is all you've got. So doesn't it make sense if you worry about the future or live in the past, telling these stories over and over and pulling upon these assumptions you made years ago, that you're basically distracted from reality, which is a non-judgmental view of what's happening right here, right now.
So to live in mindfulness more, perhaps the best place to start is in the first moments and the last moments of your day. The process of awakening in the morning is often done by most people in a sort of autopilot way. They either have an alarm clock or they wake up at a certain time. I hate alarm clocks, by the way. That's given up all your power. But you wake up at a certain time, and then it's like the day floods into their mind, and their calendar goes through their head, and their to-do list happens, and stress starts right away in the morning. And that's like autopilot. That's what happened yesterday morning, and the morning before, and the morning before, and the morning before. Well, mindfulness starts with that moment of choosing instead to, for example, take 1.5 minutes of gratitude. 90 seconds of gratitude, like count your blessings. Think of the things that you're, most wonderful in your life. Start your day differently. And then instead of going right to the calendar, instead go to an imagination of the end of the day. See the end in mind and see your day at the end of the day finishing with a feeling of satisfaction, a feeling of accomplishment, a feeling of that you did what you wanted to do and you had a wonderful experience doing it. Start the day in a different kind of way by choice. Mindfulness starts with the choice to be mindful. It's to step out of autopilot. It's to break the habit of doing it the way you always do it. So I think two great places to start are the very beginning of the day, the way you awaken in the morning, and then the way you go to sleep at night. Most people, when they go to sleep at night, they go from like thinking of a whole bunch of things down to thinking about one thing before they finally drop off into a dream and then down into the deep sleep state. Well, you could, have some power in your life by choosing what that one thing is that you think about before you drop off to sleep, like programming a dream or, putting a seed toward solving a problem or creating a new way of doing something or, think of another opportunity where mindfulness would be nice in my life and plant the seed in your mind before you go to bed at night. Again, break the habit of doing it the way you've always done it on autopilot and choose to do it differently. And then one of the most important keys, I think, in feeling safe and being mindful is that you have to change your belief systems about mistakes and failure, because if mistakes and failure cause you stress, then there's no room for creativity. There's no ability to take the next step and do something different. It's like if you're afraid of doing it wrong or not doing it great, then you won't even attempt to do it. So it's like all success comes through failing forward and making mistakes and learning from them and making new mistakes. So, the mindful state, that detached state, there's no harm in mistakes. There's no, penalty in failure. It's like willing to try new things and be new things. And that's an incredible freedom that really adds to this wonderful peace of mind.
I was talking a few minutes ago about cooking mindfully and with care. A common exercise that teachers offer, and nobody's going to have chores at our Maui mindfulness retreat, so we'll teach it, but we won't do it. The chop wood, carry water idea in Eastern philosophy is we've all got chores to do that we don't really want to do, we don't really like doing, but you got to do it. So what if instead of distracting yourself while you do it, like doing this chore, I got to wash the dishes, and there's some greasy pots in there and this delicate china, and I'm going to be at this for an hour. All right, I might as well think of something else. Well, what if instead you washed the dishes mindfully and you became aware of the temperature of the water? Let's make it a little hotter. Well, not quite that hot, and more than normal. You see, you're paying attention to the soap that you use and the way that you use it. You're watching yourself wash these dishes and rinse the dish and either dry it or put it in the dish strainer. And you allow yourself to be aware of nothing else. That is, any other distraction. As soon as your mind starts that drumbeat of, well, you got these other problems, we better worry about that. And what about these relationships that are not working? Why did that guy say that about you? Any kind of distraction like that. As soon as you realize your mind is trailing off in that direction, just let it go.
And the way you let it go is to take a deep breath. You hold by holding your breath, and you release by releasing your breath. So letting go is easy.
And then put your attention gently and deliberately. That's a very important word. Thoreau said he went to Walden to learn to live deliberately, on purpose, with a purpose and meaning. You got to have a purpose if there's going to be any meaning to your life. You put your attention then back on, I'm washing dishes here, okay? Now, when the bird starts to sing, that's something that's happening right now. So that's not really multitasking, to wash the dishes and hear the bird sing out the window. And as you hear the bird sing, you can maybe look out the window and notice how the light of the late afternoon sun is coming down through the trees and is a little more yellow than before. We have a time in the late afternoon here in Maui where the sun reminds me of butterscotch. It just sort of pours over the land, and for about 15 minutes has a real special warmth to the yellow. It's not orange yet. It's not high noon yellow, but it's got this butterscotch feeling, and I just love it. I wait for it. I look for it. Here come the butterscotch, right? But I've got to be able to pay attention. I've got to free my mind from all these distractions that most people call living their life, to instead pay attention to what's really happening right now. Now, here's an exercise we probably will do in the Hiku, which is walking meditation, where we'll just have people maybe walk down to the point, down to the bluff, and look over the ocean. And while you walk down there, the idea is to pay attention to, that's right, walking. The way you move, the way it feels to be in your body, to swing one leg forward and then shift your center of gravity so that you move toward that leg you just swung forward, and how the heel touches the ground and then rolls toward the ball of the foot as the other leg freely swings through, and you pay attention to how it feels and how your arms move naturally and normally. You haven't paid attention to this since you were 18 months old. Now you're paying attention to it. You say, that's pretty boring, Michael. I'm assuring you quite the contrary. Because what you'll be doing is watching the mind, because it's undisciplined, all of our minds are, drifting off in some other area. Suddenly, your assignment will be pay attention to the first point where you're distracted and realize you're thinking about something other than walking. Notice that. And then, as Steve said, what do? Take a breath, create a feeling of letting go, and gently place your attention back on, I'm walking here, and just feel yourself walk. Again, at first blush, it might sound like what a boring thing to do. I say quite the contrary. Boring is the life we live reviewing the past, telling these stories to ourselves over and over and over again, and telling other people these same stories. Aren't you tired of those stories? I mean, you know the ending. You've been telling these stories all your life over and over again. Really, they're mostly an appeal for that approval and acceptance we talked about before. That's why you tell the story. What is it you're trying to convince yourself of? What if you let that go? And the same thing about fears of the future. And then we're going to have similar exercises around the emotional nature. And as I say, being able to hold your emotional nature at arm's length. Now, the one thing I want to emphasize about this, we're going to spend some time on this in the retreat, is that love, the peace of mind, the contentment that we've described as a primary benefit of mindfulness, that's really not an emotion. That's what remains when you detach yourself from your emotional nature, okay? And as Steve said before, keep in mind, detachment, mindfulness, is not a disconnect. It's not like, well, I detach and no less because I've moved back. You've detached, released, unclutched, zoomed out a little bit. You took that step back so as to know more, not less. To see the bigger picture, to put it in a context. And you can do that with your emotions. Happy emotions, sad emotions, love-based emotions, fear-based emotions. Hold them at arm's length. You can take responsibility for how you feel, give up blaming others, and by learning from what you don't understand about your emotional feelings, transmute all negativity to a positive, loving feeling. But I want you to know, or at least consider, that the peace of mind and the contentment, the love and the happiness, the simple joy and the healing, mental and emotional and physical and spiritual healing that happens automatically, autonomically in these states of mind, transcends emotions and thoughts.
So the advantage of being mindful not only happens while you're being mindful, it's what happens when you're not being mindful as well. Because you see, in the past, if you were not being mindful, then ego ran all the time. And whenever your mind went into the past, it went into like regret, remorse, shame, embarrassment, things that were negative. Ego always looking at the negative because the negative might be dangerous, so it wants to make sure it keeps an eye on the negative stuff. And then when it goes into the future, it goes into worry. It goes into what could go wrong, what problems could arise, why this won't work, all that stuff. But once you start to experience the peace of mind of, and the contentment and the joy that comes in mindfulness, when you're not being mindful and your mind slips back into the past, it's likely to go into happy memories and wonderful thoughts, things that you learn from. Even when it goes to the bad stuff, it pulls out the lessons that you learned and the growth that you got from those negative experiences. And when the positive attitude focused mind drifts off into the future, it's likely to drift off into dreams and expectations and hopes and things that you want to have happen and joyful, optimistic thoughts and ideas. So even when you're not being mindful, having been mindful brings that positive attitude, that positive glow. So when you slip off into the past, it's into the positive past, and into the future, it's into the positive future. We need to go both places. We need to go into the negative and into the positive. It's just a matter of percentages. We don't need to go 50-50. We can go like 1% into the negative and 99% into the positive. We don't want to ignore the negative stuff, but something Michael told me a long, long time ago, I'm talking decades ago, was worry once. And that's just like been such a great philosophy ever since. Worry once. Yeah, you don't have to spend a whole lot of time thinking about what could go wrong. You got to have some time thinking about what could go wrong, so you have a plan for worst case scenario. But other than that, you couldn't possibly plan for every possible contingency. Just know that if you can handle the worst, you can handle anything else. Anything less, it'd be easy to handle than that. So you allow yourself to just spend most of your time when you're drifting off into the future and not being here now, going into positive stuff that could happen. But the more time you consciously, deliberately choose to be mindful, the more you create the habit of living in the moment, in the now, in the here, where really it's just a really happy place to be. All the danger in the world, in your life, is probably in your past or future. There isn't really any danger right here, right now.
It occurs to me that there is an experience of mindfulness that I think probably everyone listening now can relate to, and that's falling in love.
Oh, indeed. Or rising in love, I like to think of it as.
That too. The idea that time stands still and things seem so magical, as if you could make flowers bloom with a wave of one hand, and you lose your appetite, you don't really need to eat, and you're not sleeping that much anyway, and that's okay, and you just got this silly grin on your face as if suddenly everything in the world is just fine. Well, why did you wait to meet somebody to feel that way? And are you giving them credit for doing those feelings to you? I bet you are. Because most people think of love and contentment as some kind of commodity, a form that you can hand to each other, and we do this love swap. Hey, I will love you if you love me. Here, let me give you this big basket of love. There you go. That's what you've been looking for. Now, give me some back. And the idea that love is not a commodity, but your natural state of being, which is magnetic in nature, like a matrix or an organized field, and in the presence of someone who is special, where there is that chemistry, so-called, right? Your frequencies synchronize and harmonize. It makes sense that the magnetic field that is love is excited in you. But that's your love that you feel. It was always there, but you were distracted until you fell in love and met somebody who created this magical feeling. Do you see how important it is to take responsibility for the love in your life? But you'd have to be mindful in order to do it. And then this opens the door now to taking responsibility for all of that is not love. Everything that hurts or disappoints or upsets you in any way. Take ownership of that. Understand that the feeling is your response, your personal, unique, individual, subjective, authentic response to the situation. It wasn't done to you. You're not a victim of your feelings, love or fear, happiness or hurt. They come from us. Pretty basic stuff, but it'll never occur to you unless or until you begin the study. You must meditate, contemplate. You must read books, listen to programs like this. Hopefully come to the Maui retreat. We got 3 or 4 spots open for mid-February. This is February 13th through the 18th, 2011. And if you're listening to this years off into the future, which is quite possible, check with us at focusedpassion.com because we probably got more of them coming up. Somebody asked for one on a cruise ship the other day. I never thought of that. But we're going to be on 70 private acres in the middle of a rainforest, about an hour and a half from civilization. Yeah, we got hot showers and flush toilets and bottled water. You're going to be covered. It's going to be really a wonderful, wonderful time. But like Thoreau, who went to Walden Pond to learn to live deliberately, that's what we're going to do. We'll do emotional clearing on day 1. We'll do some problem solving, decision making, and organizing your mental nature on day 2. And then 3, 4, and 5 devoted to mindfulness, this topic. Okay? It's going to be an incredible week, and skill sets that you'll practice and then be able to take with you back to the city and pull on that paradise, finding yourself in paradise. The name of the retreat is the name of this series that we do here at Focused Passion. Finding what self? The mindful higher self, the authentic self that can look at what you thought was yourself, but is little more than a role we play at arm's length. Not disconnected, but just detached, so you can see it in context and decide, I want to pay attention to the here and now. Okay? By the way, I got to go pay some bills, but that'll take me about 30 minutes, and while I do that, I'm going to pay attention to nothing but paying bills. And there are things in my life that I really don't want to look at because they're confusing and scary, but I'm going to set aside some time to look at what scares me and what confuses me. And when I do that, I'll take a breath and relax and become mindful and understand that, you see. Most importantly, you'll learn to set aside opportunities in life, like Steve says, early in the morning or late in the evening or during the middle of the day. You can do it in just a minute or two. Take a breath and relax. The idea that you need an hour to meditate every day, well, that's wonderful, but it's not necessary. How about 60 seconds to take a slow, deep breath and relax and pay attention to how you feel? Let's do it right now. Let's do an audio journey, a little meditation, and practice mindfulness for a couple of minutes.
Because mindfulness always begins with getting out of stress, out of feeling endangered, and moving into feeling safe. And that always begins with the desire to do so, followed by one slow, conscious, deep breath. So let's begin that way. One deep breath, filling the lungs all the way full, holding at the peak, and then as you release, with the eyes closed, letting the mind slow and experiencing paradise through a place of perfect peace. Let the mind slow. Let your thoughts go to paradise and your place of peace.
Rather than imagine yourself swimming in a pool or a lake or the ocean, I'd like you to imagine yourself floating in a pool or a lake or an ocean, just floating, preferably on your back, but if you have a snorkel, you could float face down. And allow the waves to have their way with you. If you drift a little this way or float that way, it's okay. You don't resist. You just let go. And so it is with practicing mindfulness in meditation. You allow your thoughts and feelings to have their way. You release any temptation to apply your thinking to logic or to an analysis of your emotional nature, to questions or answers, and instead just take a step back and be the witness. You can watch that thought stream. You can experience the emotions coming through, but you don't react or respond in any way other than to take another nice, slow, deep breath. Do that now and let go. This is an experience of mindfulness, just sitting. Simply sitting and doing nothing else. And as soon as you find your mind is distracted, because it likes to be, it's used to being distracted, it's been trained to look out for the danger and figure out all these problems and micromanage your life. As soon as you realize it's doing that, take another breath. Do that now. Feel the letting go. And just bring yourself back to the feeling of floating. Or simply watch your breath. Put your attention gently on the bottom of your nose. And simply watch, passively, your body breathing itself all by itself from the very point where the air enters and leaves the body. And do nothing else except watch the natural ebb and flow of your breathing, the very bottom of your nose, gently, focused, paying attention.
And if your train of thought ever goes off that place at the bottom of your nose, just gently bring it back. So once again, your breath is where your attention is at. You drift away and you come back. And be happy while you're here. The more you stay, the more the happiness does appear. Just notice the breathing. And all thoughts are free to drift slowly past you, and you just let them be as you focus on your breathing, and it's clear. Breath after breath, your focus is here.
Take a nice, slow, deep breath as we prepare to bring you back to your wide-awake state. Hold as you peak and then exhale fully. Reorient yourself to the sound of our voices. In other words, wake up slowly, reminding yourself of what you'll see in just a moment when I finally ask you to open your eyes wide awake and to be alert and feel rested and refreshed. And so take another slow breath, filling your lungs. Hold as you peak. And then as you exhale, now open your eyes wide awake, feeling fine, rested, refreshed. Not only wide awake, but notice how wide awake and unencumbered the mind is. And as we conclude this program in a few minutes, watch the thoughts rush in and demand your attention. And this time you may want to say, no, not really, not now. I'm just going to carry this affect of mindfulness for a little while longer, paying attention to the moment, how I feel physically, senses and sensations, watching my thoughts without being driven by them, experiencing my feelings, but knowing I'm so much more than my emotions, not a victim of life, but a fountain through which life pours out into the world, happy and content. Mindfulness. Nothing more than a quantum leap in the evolution of humanity. I really think this is If you come back in 100 years, people are going to, maybe 200, 300 years, I'm not sure how long it'll take to reach critical mass, but this is the next age, the age of consciousness, the age of awareness, of humans waking up and saying, I'm not an animal. I don't have to limit myself to knee-jerk reactions out of my lizard brain. I've got this neocortex. I might as well learn to use it.
So I have a choice. I can choose to live in fear like many animals do much of the time, with any thoughts in the past being negative thoughts and any thoughts in the future being worry thoughts. Or I can choose to spend some of my time being mindful, that is, living in the moment, washing the dishes and only washing the dishes. I could choose to be mindful and step back and observe my train of thought that goes by and just see what happens and let go of it, observe it as it happens, or even choose to step back and not judge my applied thoughts, the thoughts that I choose to have about problem solving, and just be open to whatever creativity pops up. I can choose to be mindful, and that has the advantage of not only the extra understanding of yourself in the moment, but it also tends to allow you to see the world through the lens of love. And when your mind goes into the past, it goes into happy memories and also positive lessons. And when it goes into the future, it goes into hopes and dreams and aspirations, and instead of into like worry and regret. So it's a wonderful thing to do. It helps you when you're conscious. It helps you even when you're unconscious to be more conscious. Choose to be mindful. It really is the greatest trick that human mind can possibly... No, it really is the greatest place the human mind can possibly go.
And if you're listening to this program in a timely fashion, in other words, if it's early February of 2011, we got a couple of openings for the Maui Mindfulness Retreat in the Hiku. Check out focusedpassion.com on the internet. There's an ED in there, that's the W's, focusedpassion.com. Click on the button that says Maui Retreat, and all the information is there. Poke around. It's a simple site to navigate. If you do have questions, you can email us at info@focusedpassion.com, and we'll look for you in the middle of February. It's going to be a wonderful experience. This is, I think we'll invoke the spirit of Henry David Thoreau and live life deliberately in paradise. That's something you'll remember for the rest of your life. Thanks for being with us. We'll talk to you next week in the Finding Yourself in Paradise Premium Audio Series. And as always, be gentle, love life, and take care of each other. For Steve Snyder, this is Michael Benner. Aloha from Maui.